Ini pula laporan terkini berkaitan dengan inflasi Malaysia yang meningkat 1.8% pada November 2024 dengan mata indeks mencatatkan 133.3 berbanding 130.9 pada bulan yang sama tahun sebelumnya.
First of all, inflation refers to a general increase in the prices of goods and services over time, which causes the purchasing power of money to fall. This meaning that its ringgit buy less than before. In economic terms, it is often measured by changes in the Consumer Price Index (CPI), which track the average price changes of a selected basket of goods and services over time. Next, inflation matters for Malaysia for several key reasons. First, it affects the cost of living for households, especially when essential items like food, transportation and housing become more expensive. For example, food and beverage, which make up nearly 30% of Malaysia's CPI basket, have continued to rise, pushing up everyday expense for many families. Second, rising inflation can erode households' purchasing power if wages do not increase at the same pace as prices, making it harder for people to afford basic needs. Third, inflation influences economic stability, affecting decisions by consumers, businesses, and policymakers. If inflation becomes too high or too volatile, it can reduce confidence in the economy, disrupt savings, and complicate planning for both households and firms. Objective of the study. The first goal of this study is to analyze inflation changes in Malaysia over the past 10 years. Understanding how inflation has fluctuated over time helps show long-term trends and patterns in price level, which can reflect changes in economic conditions such as consumer demand, production costs, and global market influences. The second objective is to identify the major causes of inflation in Malaysia. Economists explain inflation through different theories, such as demand pull inflation, like when demand exceeds supplies, and cost push inflation, like when rising production costs cause higher prices. The third objective is to understand the impact of inflation on people and the economy. Inflation affects households' purchasing power, especially when prices increase faster than income, make it more expensive for families to afford everyday goods and services.
Next is data and methodology. In this case, inflation figures to source from reliable platforms such as Department of Statistics Malaysia (DOSM), the World Bank, and Y-Charts. The collected data was organized by year to maintain the accuracy and clarity. The information will be arranged into tables and used to generate a line graph to illustrate Malaysia's inflation movement from 2015 to 2024. After that, the table complete and so two graphs were completed. A trend analysis was conducted to observe the pattern of rising falling in inflation over 10 years period.
This table shows Malaysia's annual inflation rate from 2015 to 2024. It helps us clearly compare how inflation changed each year over a 10-year period. The line graph shows how Malaysian inflation rate went up and down over the 10-year period. Key movement to highlight clearly: highest inflation 2017 and 2022, where inflation increased sharply. Lowest inflation 2020, when inflation turned negative, which is deflation. Inflation stabilized after 2023, returning to a moderate level. Overall, the graph shows that Malaysia's inflation is not constant but changes due to economic conditions, global factors, and government policies.
As the graph shows, 2015 and 2016 is remain the same. CPI is 2.1%. It's a moderate inflation. It's remain stable, showing a constant price growth. But in 2017, the CPI increased to 3.87 because the higher food prices and the cost of living. And for the 2018, dropped to 0.88% because of the subsidy reform and the lower food prices. For the 2019, it's 0.66%. Is a very low inflation because of the mild price growth and close to price stability. And for the 2020, dropped to negative 1.14%. It's a deflation year because of the COVID-19.
It's not ideal. Our food security is also threatened together with the rising cost of living. I feel a bit frustrated to see how the government isn't taking any action.
But the government led by Prime Minister Ismail Sabri said that's not true. It has launched an all-out war or jihad against inflation.
And the 2021 is increased to 2.48%. It's a recovery phase. The prices start rising as the economy reopen. So in the 2020, it still increased until 3.38%. It's a stronger inflation. It's likely driven by a global supply chain issue, higher energy and food costs. 2023, the CPI dropped a little to 2.49%. It's a slightly moderation. Inflation still present, but it's a cooling down from the 2020 spike. And lastly is 2024, dropped to 1.83%. It's a continued moderation. Inflation approaching more stable, manageable levels.
Firstly, inflation affects household. Inflation causes the price of daily necessities such as food, fuel, utilities, and transportation to increase. As a result, families experience a decrease in their purchasing power, meaning they can buy fewer goods and services with the same amount of income. This situation often forces households to either reduce their spending or save less. Poor and low-income families are the most affected because a larger portion of their income is spent on basic necessities.
In the coming months. At this juncture, the government has yet to remove subsidies for certain key items such as electricity, petrol, diesel, gas and flour, to name a few. I do not rule out gradual reductions of some of these subsidies further down the road, which would lead to higher inflation persisting into 2023. As a result of higher inflation risk, I foresee more interest rate hikes from the central bank.
Secondly, inflation has a significant impact on businesses. When inflation rises, the cost of doing business increase, including expenses for raw materials, wages, and logistics. To maintain profitability, companies may be forced to raise their price. However, higher price can reduce consumer demand, which may eventually slow down businesses' growth and expansion. Next, inflation also places pressure on government finances. Governments often need to increase spending on subsidies and social welfare programs to support vulnerable population during inflationary periods. At the same time, rising prices reduce the real value of government expenditure, making fiscal planning more challenging and less effective.
In conclusion, Malaysian inflation trend from 2015 to 2024 shows the price movement was shaped by a mix of international and local influences. The data shows two major spikes in inflation, particularly in 2017 and 2022. That caused by policy adjustment, higher fuel costs and global supply. In 2020, recorded deflation due to reduced economic activity during COVID-19 pandemic. Lastly, by 2023 to 2024, inflation started to stabilize. Overall, this shows that understanding inflation trend is the most important for evaluating Malaysia's economic and its impact on household, businesses and country.